I have to use my computer. You have it on flash disk? Slides. Oh, I think, this one, is it? You know, it's not that one. The flash has not come. Where is your flash? Huh? Where is your flash? Okay, let's try now. Okay, this one. That's it. So, where is it? The folder called. Let's see. So just say this is for your lunch too long. Yes, sorry.
I will make my mind presentation for my first year student. Usually we stop at this some lecture. We don't have to like if everyone is escaping from this lecture. After that, I will let you give it student evaluation. After accept, please.
Yes. Now, are they? No, not this. Yes. You can. So that's what we're there. So it has to be. Yeah. So this is the one for lunch. Just our lunch delayed. Huh? Just like that. Save us. So. So you have to sit down. Very good.
Now it's okay. Is it? Okay, good afternoon. I would like to make a sincere apology for this late start. We took a bit long with the lunch and a bit of connection issues, but we are back together, and I would like us to get into this workshop. What we're going to do, we are going to go through how we identify plants, because we've said from the bush, phytomedicine, from the bush to the shelf. So we are there now at that level where we're saying we are in the bush, getting the material, and we need to see how we can process it to a point where eventually we can bring it to the shelf. So welcome. So I'll begin where it normally begins, and that is at traditional medicine. Now we know that most of the plants that have given medicine usually have come from traditional medicine. It's how different communities have used plants, and we have tapped into that information and are able to identify plants that are of importance for medicine. And it's not just medicine. I'm just using herbal medicine now because it's the most prominent, but we also have many other natural products, ways that we use the natural products. For example, we have rubber from plants, and that must have come from the traditional medicine, or rather the traditional way of using our plants. So traditional medicine has given the greatest number of conventional medicine that we know. And we also know, for example, that 80% of the world's population depends on traditional medicine for their medical needs. And if we also look at literature, we've seen that plant derivatives make up 50% of the drugs that have been used clinically. So this kind of usage and the diversity of plants makes plants really a great source. And where do we find this greatest diversity of plants? Usually, we find them along the tropics, around the tropics, and that's because of the nature. It's warm enough, it's wet enough, and there are very many niches in which the plants can grow. For example, even on a mountain, you will find a mountain has different levels of plants, and so that increases the diversity of the plants in those areas. So the greatest diversity, therefore, is in the tropics, yet in many of those areas where we have the highest diversity, we tend to have very limited scientific and technical skills. So where the diversity is highest happens to be also the areas where we have low technical skills. So we need to improve that, because what that means is that the diversity in these areas is really not being utilized to its potential. So we require, therefore, to get technical knowledge, and the first should actually begin with how we collect the plants themselves. Now, NAPRECA was actually formed to try and address this problem, because the technical know-how was low, it didn't have the machines needed, and therefore NAPRECA was formed so that we could look at ways of improving on the digitization of our plants. Now, this year, we are beginning to collaborate with comstech, and we want to this to continue, because we cannot have ourselves in cocoons. If you live in a cocoon, you don't know what is happening elsewhere. So we need collaboration, serious collaboration, in order to be able to look at our resources. So I'm showing this map, which indicates the diversity distribution, how our plants are distributed globally. And you can see the red areas. That is where we have high biodiversity. And it's also for plants as well as for animals. That is the greatest area of biodiversity. And you can see we have Africa, we have parts of Asia, and also South America. Really, really high biodiversity. But again, like I've said, some of these areas also tend to have low skills. So now I come to the part of plant taxonomy. Why is it important? Why is plant taxonomy important? So I'll just begin by giving a few definitions. You may know them, maybe for the first time you're going to hear of them, but taxonomy is the science that describes, it classifies living organisms. So we're looking at organisms, and we know we have a great diversity. If we were to try to understand this diversity by just looking at a single plant every day, we would not be able to get through. Because so far we know, just for plants alone, we have at least 400,000 that have been described. And we know that there are more that we still don't know about. Because again of our technical skills, we need to up them up. So that is taxonomy. It describes, it classifies, and it names plants. Now, there is another area that we use a lot. That's where traditional medicine actually comes in, and that is ethnobotany. We are looking at how individuals in the community use their plants. How do they use the plants? So the different cultures usually utilize plants in a particular manner. And sometimes they're not the same. Sometimes you may get even the same plants found in two different places may be used in different ways. So we need to understand each of these cultures and how they utilize the plant. Now we come to phytochemistry, which is what is in our theme today. We have the phytochemistry or phytomedicine, and basically it's looking at the medicine coming from plants. And then natural product, which is a bit more broad, we are looking at natural compounds that arise from living organisms. So that is where we need to see how we can utilize our skills. So this is a quick documentation. Just looking at plants, I may be biased more towards plants. So at least 400,000 plants have been documented. But when we look at the number of plants that have been destroyed in terms of the chemical composition, you can see it's just a bare out. So what is happening therefore to the earth? So there are a lot of plants. We have a lot of work. NAPRECA. There's a lot of work to be done. So we need, therefore, to look at taxonomy, plant taxonomy, in order to identify, to get the plants. First of all, even to source those plants from wherever they are, we need taxonomy. And then once we get them, we need to curate them properly and to get proper names. So can you imagine if I know Huntington, I called you Peter today, how would you feel? So you need to be called by your right name, isn't it? We need to give you the correct name. Why? Because if I know your correct name, I will get information about you. I can go back to your home in Uganda, look for Huntington, and I'll find you. If I go with the wrong name to Uganda to look for you, obviously I'm not going to go far. So we need to get correct information. So we need to name those plants correctly. So incorrect plant material, if we give it a wrong name, then we are going to have wrong or disastrous results. And I'm going to give you some examples of some disastrous or misidentification of plants or wrong use of the plant names. So these are some of cases where we have had wrong identification, sometimes intentional or by accident. So there's a plant there, which is Actium lapa, which is it's a herbal. It's used as a herbal tea, but it has been sometimes wrongly collected. If somebody goes to the bush to collect, sometimes they get the wrong plant, and the one that sometimes they get is Atropa belladonna. Now, if you remember anything of your chemistry, you'll know that Atropa belladonna is a poisonous plant, and sometimes it's used medicinally. It's what actresses use, or I don't want to say actresses, actors, both male and female, use it to put the drops into their eyes so that the eye pupils can remain open. And that is sometimes for beauty, sometimes it's the fact that when you're making films, the pupils should be enlarged so that it has effect. But so you can imagine you get the wrong plant, it's a poisonous plant, then that's a dangerous situation. So some people have gotten poisoned because of not getting the correct plant. And this is one probably that we know of more in our country. We have Solanum nigra, which is a vegetable. Use it as a vegetable. It's a very beautiful vegetable. And sometimes it is wrongly collected. We get the wrong plant. And when you go to the bush, they grow together with Datura stramonium. And Datura stramonium is a poisonous plant. So we've had incidences of even whole members of families being hospitalized because they ate Datura instead of Solanum. So you can see the importance, why it is important to get the correct plant. And to get the correct plant means that you must understand something on taxonomy. So whether you're a taxonomist or not, you need taxonomy just for your own welfare. So adulteration also occurs, and sometimes it's deliberate or by accident, just like we've seen collection by accident. So usually if it is deliberate, it's because people are looking at the cost, money. They're looking at money. So there is an economic gain by using the wrong plant that looks like the one that you're collecting, but maybe has no effect. Usually if there is adulteration, they use plants that are not going to poison. It's not like taking Datura, for example, because if you use that, you'll be known very quickly. So they use plants that have no effect. They won't kill you, they won't cure you, they will not harm you. But what's the point of going to buy a plant, a material herbal, if it's not going to cure you? So that's a problem. So these are some examples. For example, Arabica senna. There's a dog senna, which is sometimes used to replace the Arabica senna. Arabica senna is more prestigious, okay? Then also you've seen honey. We use honey. We normally collect honey, but sometimes you get just a sugary syrup instead of the honey, of course, with different effects. So adulteration can be quite deliberate. So now, what are the practices of taxonomy? What do we normally do in order to come up with the correct plant? So first, we need to go out, collect the plant, and there's a whole process of that. We need to identify that plant, and then we also need to prepare voucher specimens. And this is so much so, especially for the phytomedicine. We need to prepare voucher specimens. So I'll look at some of these. I'll just jump that. So this is the collection of plants. So you'll get the plants that you want, your plant of choice. And you can see when you get the plant, there's a way you collect. You need to get what we call fertile samples. A fertile sample has flowers or fruits. So if you go to the field and you don't get either of them, then basically you're getting a sterile plant, and those are very difficult to identify, especially if it comes to a point where you need to categorize, or you have two different plants that really look alike. You can only differentiate them when you have either flowers or fruit. Now, once you get your plant, you need to curate it. So you dry it and you press it and you place it in a press. You're going to see some of those presses here. And so we normally put them there in order to dry the material and to make sure it is flat so that we can place it on, we can mount it on sheets of paper. So the next is mounting. We mount them on sheets of paper, usually hard paper, and we must give the label. So you can see the label here, which gives information about that material, where it was collected, what is its name, what uses it has. And then we file them in whichever manner. Herbaria, we have herbaria that may have different types of cupboards. Smaller herbaria sometimes use boxes, but whichever way, you need to store them in a way that you can retrieve material that you require. So that is a specimen, and that I just showing the labels and what kind of information is needed. So what is the importance of voucher specimens? And I'm saying this not so much for the taxonomists, the biologists, because they already know. I'm really talking about people working in natural products. So we need to get the correct information, botanical information, and to put them in a store, in the cupboards, in a relevant manner, because that is when we shall know that compound, the chemical compounds that are given by that plant. And you see, voucher specimens can be even the same plant collected at different times. So you can collect it in January, the same plant from the same tree, collect it maybe a few months later and so on, okay? Because sometimes you get changes and you need to consolidate all those characteristics. So we look at the life cycle of that plant. Then a good specimen, a good voucher specimen will always have the different plant parts. So just don't look at the flowers alone and put. You need the leaves, if possible. If what you are collecting were roots, then also get roots, get the bark, so that we see how those parts look. So again, just to repeat there, that you need to get the plant at different times. And sometimes even in the same area, you may get variants. For example, I'm working on a particular species, Dodonea, and you find that when you get it in different, say, geographical areas, it has different chemicals or chemicals in different concentrations. So it's important to show where you've collected. So don't just say, because I'm collecting Dodonea, I can just pick up one specimen, but I walk around the whole country. You need to get all those different vouchers. So this summarizes what you require before you can place your material in the herbarium and you can write your paper about your plant. So first of all, you need to see, is that botanical material, the voucher specimen that you've collected, is it good enough? And how do you know it's good? You check the parts that we've talked about, leaves, flowers, and so on. Is it good? Is it a good voucher specimen? So if yes, then you move on to the next part, which is to have it identified. If once you identify it correctly, the name must be in Latin, and that's something I'll probably talk about. We normally give Latin names for plants, not that we are ancient, but that is the language of communication then, and we have continued to use it today. So we give the Latin names, which are normally binomial, I'll explain. And then that material is now considered to be a good voucher specimen. And you can see what happens if it's not a good voucher specimen, the things that you need to take it through. Now, how do we identify plant material? So what we normally do is to look at the characteristics of the plant. How does it look? How are the flowers? How are the leaves? And we have a whole description of different leaves and flowers and fruits. So at that point, you may need to go through some of those characteristics. You'll need to, to study those. So for example, this is Melia Azadara. You can see the kind of fruits it has. You can see the kind of leaves, which are compound leaves, and look at the flowers. Even the color of the flowers is a good description. So you can actually do quite a good description to show the different characteristics of that plant. Now, you may know that plant. Maybe you've seen it before, so you know the plant. So you can use your own experience to give the name of the plant, okay? But now, supposing you don't, you've never seen it. Maybe you've come to Kenya this time and you're seeing plants, but you've never met them before. So how will you know how to identify them? So you can compare the plants with authentic specimens where they have been named before. So we can have, for example, we have a herbarium where plants are named and kept. We have a botanic garden. We have books, manuals, flora, photographs, illustrations. All those can give you an idea about the name of the plant. Now, if that is still not possible, you can ask an expert, talk to an expert in the area. We have experts who are, who specialize in different, for example, families. We know people who just specialize on gramineans, they know every grass, okay? But they may not know others, but they're specialists in that particular area. So we look for those specialists and we can get the information. But for many of us, what we can do is to use botanical keys. If we use botanical keys, all we just need to understand is what are these characteristics that are being mentioned, and we'll be able to name the plant. So I'm going to look at these keys because we are going to see them today. So a taxonomic key is an analytical key. It helps you to identify plants. So you're going to look at the characteristics given. It leads you step by step, asking you if your plant has this character. If it has, tick. You select and you move on to the next. So we have those botanical keys. Now, they are of different types. We have what you call the single access or dichotomous keys, and then we have the multiple access or polyclave or synoptic keys. So the first one usually is used a lot. We use that a lot. That's what we teach. That's what you're likely to get in any taxonomic book. It's probably a single access key. But multiple keys are becoming popular because you can use computers. You can computerize them. And you can put like 3 or 4 different characters. Like, does this plant have, like the one that we just put before, does it have round flowers with compound leaves and blue flowers or something like that. So you can put several characters and then it gives you the name of the plant. But then the first one is usually quite simple to use and is very commonly used. So this is an example of a dichotomous key. And you see what it does. It leads you with questions where you have to say yes or no, okay? They're usually contrasting. So you can only say yes or no and you move on. So for example, vertebrate, does it have fur? If it has fur, then it's a mammal. If it doesn't have fur, you move on to the next. And you keep on going that way. And the yes will eventually lead you to the character or to the name of that organism. So we say that it uses contrasting characters. So red and blue, for example, they're contrasting. So you select, is it red or is it blue? And then you move on. So these are types of dichotomous keys. We have basically 2 types. We have what we call the yoked keys. We have the bracketed keys. And you can see the difference. They are actually the same. This is the same key, but in the different format. And you see, you eventually come up with the name of the plant. So usually you get the bracketed keys, but they are all quite commonly used. So naming of the plant. So you have identified the plant, then you need to name it. So we have a terminology there, nomenclature, which means naming, correct naming, using particular rules. Now, in many of our cultures, even for ourselves, when we are given names at home, there are certain rules that are used. For example, in my community, the way we name a young person is you name them after their grandparents, okay? In other communities, they use another format. For example, when somebody was born, was it morning, evening, or night? There are particular names for that, okay? I know of communities that name after plants. So there are different ways. So certain rules usually prevail. So for plants, we have rules that we use for naming. And the rules actually came up through time. So before 1753, and that was the time of Carolus Linnaeus. Before that time, it was a description. So if I wanted to describe our Secretary General of NAPRECA, I would describe him, from the head, to the bottom, okay? Say his head, he has cut his hair, he wears a suit, puts on black shoes. That way, okay? That was the kind of description. And it was difficult because supposing I left something about his jacket, then I would not know anything about it, okay? So it was difficult, and each of us can describe the same thing in very different ways. So it was not consistent. So what happened? Carolus Linnaeus decided to use a very logical method. Just name the plant using two names. Every plant species was given two names. And then that became very consistent. And that is what we use to date. So that is Carolus Linnaeus. And his naming system was given, we call it the binomial naming system, using two names. And that we've continued to use. So for example, Zea maize, you've just had the corn meal today in your lunch. So Zea maize is maize, okay? So all names are given in that manner. So these are some of the characteristics of a scientific name, a binomial. So usually it has authority, an authority, who named it, okay? So if you give a plant a name, then you are the authority of that name. And your name must be put after that binomial. So just like we have Pavonia, Urens, Cab. Cab is the person who gave it the name. Then we normally italize them if you're printing, or underline them separately if you're writing it out. A plant can only have one name. You can only have one name. And when I say one name, it's that binomial, okay? So I know we have sometimes this, whenever we are introducing ourselves, we say, my names are, okay? Which is really not correct. You only have one name, even if it has many epithets in it, okay? That's just one name. So every plant can only have one name, and the earliest published name for that plant is the correct name. All the others become synonyms. Now, how do we, what are the rules that govern our naming system? So today we have the International Code of Nomenclature for algae, fungi, and plant. So we call it the ICN. Now the ICN was formerly referred to as ICBN because it was botanical, but you know now what has happened. Organisms that like fungi are no longer considered to be plants. They actually have a phyla of their own. So now it was not botanical anymore. We actually say which of those groups are covered by this code. So we have the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. We have the International Code of Nomenclature for those 3 different categories. So that is the current rules. And you can see it only came up in 2018. So we have a history of codes because everywhere the meeting is held, the code is named after that place. So the last meeting was held in China, Shenzhen. So it's called the Shenzhen Code. So that is the latest code that governs. And this code, the codes are important, especially for herbal medicine and what we're talking about today, because they allow us to label our herbal medicines, okay, correctly. So you can get the correct herbal medicine by following the rules of naming. Now, classification, we said that we've already mentioned that taxonomy also involves classification. We need to classify our plants. We need to know, we have different ways of classifying. We put them into categories, and that's why we have, for example, families. We have the legume family, we have grass family, we have all those different families, almost up to 400 and something different families. They are all based on some classification criteria. And so you can see how we classify. We begin at the bottom here. We have the species, and then we classify it until eventually it fits into the kingdom and so on. So we continue classifying the smallest bit into bigger and bigger categories until we eventually know in which ultimate category it belongs. So you can see that type of classification. This is also basically talking about the same thing, but you can see it described differently. And you can see grass, in which we find our maize is indicated there, and you see it's classified until we get a plant kingdom. So that is the general rule. Now, most of our classification systems have been based on morphological characteristics. So we look at the plant, describe it, and you classify it into the different groups. However, like I said, 2 people can classify the same thing in different ways. So we have very many classification systems through time. And so it became difficult. Every time as a taxonomist came, he would see something differently and name it, so classify them differently. So we have different sets of classification. So the taxonomist came and thought, why don't we look at a system that is consistent, okay? And so today we have what you call the angiosperm phylogenetic group classification, which is based on DNA, molecular biology. And we look at that because DNA, at least you know, if you get the DNA, if you classify it all in the same way, you'll be consistent throughout, okay? So they have looked at different DNA molecules and classified all the plants based on that particular DNA molecule. And they've been able to come up with a consistent classification. So this has become very popular now because it doesn't depend on my idea. It is very scientific. So this is the current system. And for molecular work or for phytochemistry, it's very good because we can actually make comparisons of different groups based on that DNA. Why? Because DNA, we know, is what gives particular molecules or organs that we utilize. For example, enzymes. The DNA will give a particular enzyme. That particular molecule will always give a particular enzyme. So if you have that, then you know that these different plant groups or different groups that you're looking at are similar. So I won't go into too much of this because it has quite a bit, but what has happened is that it actually gave some surprises, this APG classification, because sometimes we always thought some organisms were more advanced than others. Now we are discovering that that is not always the case. We always thought, if you look at many of the classifications, phylogenetic classifications, they always thought that monocots were very advanced, but it's turning out not to be the case. So there's quite a number of surprises. Now, but the one thing that is important is that monocots appear to be a really homogeneous group, okay? But the dicots are not, they are not. It means basically what has been happening with the dicots is that we just get different groups and just throw them into a basket for convenience, but they are not really alike. And these are some of the different characteristics. Eudicots, monocots, magnolids are distributed in that way. And then there are 5 other clades that we really don't know. They are more of a basket with different plant groups put in together. So why I'm bringing this one up is because we can use it for our phytomedicine. We use this to even just to show which plants may have a compound of interest. If you know, for example, we've been talking about the retinoids, then you can actually tell which other plants are likely to have retinoids just by looking at their classification based on this group. And that will help us in identifying new sources or new natural products from different plants. So this is how it would look. Don't worry about how it looks, but so you can see the monocots are here, the eudicots, which are the dicots, are further up, and then you have the other different groups. So here, I just identified this because we've been looking at grass, and this is where grass would fall. I think that is quite enough. We'll stop there. Any questions? So you can have any questions before we actually begin to look at some of the materials that we have, because this is actually a workshop. So it would be good to look at some of the things that I've been talking about. You actually see them face to face in the lab. So do we have any questions? Yes. Let's begin. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Not really. You see, the molecules will always be there. The DNA will be there at whatever stage. What I think you are trying to imply, because we have the same DNA in different plants, but they express themselves at different stages. So you may see one plant looking, it doesn't have, like if it's very young, I'll talk about the eucalyptus. There are some eucalyptus, when they are very young, even the color is different. It looks bluish, but once it matures, they all turn green. So the DNA is still there. It's still the same. It doesn't change. But it expresses at a different stage. So, what happens with the DNA is they always light up at different stages. They may be dormant now, but they express at a later stage. So the DNA is the same. Yes. Okay, it was actually there even before acacia changed the name. The changing of the name of acacia was not because of the APG. It was because it was thought the name did not fit what we call there's the nomenclatural system of naming. What I was talking about, the ICN. They say that the correct name of a plant is the earliest name. And the earliest name, the acacia, the earliest name was not the ones that we have in Kenya, for example, or in Africa. The earliest name was given to that set in Australia. And so what we call acacia here, they say is not acacia. We don't always agree. We've had a lot of debate, in fact, but it's not the earliest name. Acacia is not the earliest name. So according to the rules of naming, the earliest name is the correct name. And acacia that we have here in Kenya, that was not the earliest name. The earliest name was actually from Australia. Yeah. So it was not because of APGA, it was the naming system. Okay, yes. 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 From the plants. Okay, so the reason why we ask that you get fertile specimens is for identification purposes. Okay, because if they're sterile and you have two different plants, two different species, but they have similar characteristics, you will not be able to tell them apart. And you may run into that problem when you're talking about wrong connection because you do not have sufficient knowledge to get the correct one. Okay? So we need flowers or fruits to differentiate. So it's about the phytochemical components you get. You are likely to see those compounds. You're likely to get those compounds even when you don't have the flowers, depending on what you're collecting. Okay? For example, if it's the bark, you still get the compounds from the bark, whether they are flowering or not. They still have them. The best season is, I think, it's going to really depend on your plant, and you need to study your plant first. There are some that produce compounds better, say, at a particular season, young, much older. For example, like there are some essential oils. You get this in the young tips, while others are there. So you need to know your plant and how it's valued. So that's what we have. A lot of or rather start just showing when it comes to fact. So I've seen studies where you get the interval, right? And then you can send that's important. Curation. Oh, the curation, yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. About the wrong, when I was talking about the adulteration, you see, if you get some of these very, medicinal plants, say like kombucha, you may find they don't grow very, very quickly, or you can't get the bark that you need. So what do? You get another bark of a plant that looks similar. So you see what happens, you're deceiving your client. Yeah. You're saying the yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's actually very important. One, when you know a particular plant belongs, say, to a particular family, the chance that another member of that family will have those compounds is very high. Okay? It's very high. And in fact, I just forget which plant, but there are certain plants that have been found that way that even had more of that chemical than the one that you already have. Okay? So that is a very logical way to look for plants that have components of interest. So long as they fall in the same group, the chances are that they also will react in the same way. Okay? So they produce the same or even better chemicals than us. So it's very important. And now with the FPG, which is, you can say it's more refined because it's not subjective. You're using a scientific method to get those plants into those, then the chances are that it's even better. The comparison even. Yes. Okay, now we have a taxonomy. We can actually look at those different varieties, and then what you need to do is, what you discover, you know if you belong to a particular species, then you need to see. So if it is a variety, it means there's even a genetic component. Okay? There is something that differentiates genetically. Okay? So you can separate into those different varieties. But I know we also have these varieties that we sort of horticultural varieties. And again, we have a code used for naming. So if you come up, you can make a variety yourself. Come up with, various processes and come up with variety. So those are multifunction variety, and you name them yourself. And yeah, in fact, the people who sell them, if the variety, their variety you can sell them, and nobody else has to make money on it without. So that is so basically we have a taxonomic variety, which is genetical, and we can differentiate them. And they are very, for example, like essential oil. I can tell you for that for sure that there are varieties, say of Osimum, say that you can sell them, or Osimum, but they are different varieties. And you can check them out and completely separate them based on their content. Okay, yes. Yes. Asking for questions. Maybe I better stop this so that we can check. Okay, comments. And check. Yeah.
You see when you comment on the global
Warming
and the future of phytomedicine.
Okay, maybe I'll comment on that. We don't see who is the person who has made the question.
So, yeah, the slides for the presentation will be shared with all of you. We just
Kindly.
But there's the question on global warming.
Okay, global warming and phytomedicine. Now, the effects of climate change on plants it actually affects the kind of chemicals that are found on the plant. So, for example, I'm talking again of, say, essential oils. There are certain plants that will probably, diminish their natural products. They may disappear. So we need to find a way actually of sustaining these plants and ensuring that they are able to survive this global warming. For example, how do we protect them? How do we protect our ecosystem? So planting of trees, for example, helps us to maintain certain plants that require shade, and therefore will have an implication on our phytomedicine. I hope I have answered you. That is Sohil.
The question, I think, is more of chemistry question.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be for you this.
How do we synthesize metal oxide? Okay.
Okay, so kindly share. Wonderful.
Yes, we will share. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, the volume has gone. Oh,
so can you
because I
ask
was
if
talking.
the volume is okay now?
Is it okay? Can you hear me now?
Can you just say yes if you can hear?
Yeah, you can unmute and just.
We can hear you clearly.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we have more questions from the, yes. Yes.
Can you speak louder?
Yeah.
No, they will not hear.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Prof, is it okay to use a synonym?
No, it's not okay to use a synonym because a synonym is an incorrect name. Whenever we have synonyms, they are incorrect. If you want the correct, to get the information that you want, you need to use the correct name. A synonym is an incorrect name. But there are people who use it because, for example, we are still using acacia today. But it is the wrong name. So we need to get the correct one. No, we don't have acacia. You have been wrong all along. The name changed, I think, in 2016. Yes. So we don't have acacia now. In Africa, the name has changed. Yeah. Let me try and remember. It's some said no. I'll get you the name just now. There are 3 different names. The acacia has been subdivided in Africa into 3 different genera. So I'll get you the name. It's just slipped out. Yeah. The old information, and that's why we need butcher specimens, because the name that was given acacia, say nilotica, okay? Whenever we have the specimen in the herbarium, we update the name as it changes. So we continue with the new name. But if we didn't have a butcher specimen, we'll never know what you were talking about. For example, when the names have changed, what were you talking about when you said acacia nilotica? We'll never know. But if we have a voucher, then we have evidence that this is a plant that you talked about. Now it is referred to as a different name.
So the next question is more of phytochemistry.
Yeah.
Can I?
Yes.
Then.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. So let me sit there. So this question on kindly speak on a plant or plants whose phytochemicals have been found to change due to global warming. Basically, global warming caused a change in the environment. And the reason why plants synthesize phytochemicals is for their interaction with their environment. It's for that purpose. So if the environment changes, the secondary metabolite or the phytochemicals in this plant change, because situation have changed. And in order to adapt to the new situation, they will need new set of chemicals. Yes, that's what I can only see. So the so it will not influence the DNA in principle. In principle, at the end of the day, the compounds, the macromolecules that are responsible for the biosynthesis of secondary metabolites are the enzymes. It's the enzymes that enable plants to transform one chemical compound into another. And then what you should know, basically the starting materials available to synthesize the thousands and maybe several millions of compounds you see in nature, the starting materials are very few. Acetyl coenzyme A, and dimethyl DMAPP, shikimic acid, etc. Very few of them. But plants starting from these chemicals synthesize different types of chemical compounds based on their genetic makeup. And they synthesize them for a purpose as it is demanded by their environment. So the same plant, if you keep the same plant species in a colder room and then keep them in the sun, the same plant species, they are going to synthesize different set of chemicals because the environment is different. So I don't think it will lead to a change in genetic makeup. The plant probably will remain the same, but the proteins, the enzymes, the synthesize could be different, and most importantly, what the enzymes facilitate synthesis will be different. Good, yeah. Yes.
Maybe also. Yeah.
Yeah?
The-
No, not the, it's not the you see what I said, plants synthesize secondary metabolite for a particular purpose, for their interaction with their environment, in response to what the environment brings to them. For example, if they are infected by fungus, they will synthesize antifungal compounds. The same plant, if it's an environment free from microorganisms, it will not synthesize those type of chemical compounds. But if it is kept outside and exposed to microorganisms, it has got its innate ability to synthesize. So it will kick on, it will kickstart those systems to synthesize the secondary metabolite requires to interact with its environment. So the secondary meta profile of plants will differ not only because they are genetically different from each other, the same genetic makeup, but different environmental conditions. If the environmental conditions are different, the secondary metabolites will be different.
Yeah, and that's true. We see, for example, aloe, we have, say, different aloes there. You get an aloe growing, for example, in Baringo, and the same species of aloe growing in a different place, a bit colder, you find the chemical compositions are different. And we've seen, for example, we are always told by the users that they prefer the aloe from Baringo than from the others because that one is seen to be more potent. So it's because of environmental conditions. Yes.
I think in the morning after the professor mentioned about something about standardization of the system.
Yes.
That was part of course, different plants grow in different environments, even in the same part in
Yes.
Ireland and Europe.
Yeah.
They have the same constituents, but of different levels. So if I'm not just corrected, but yeah, I'm still different from mixing 10 grams and 10 grams, it will give you a composition.
It's, yeah, very different.
And that's why really the future of our home medicine will not rely on harvesting from forest. But the only way to manage standardization and consistency must be from the garden.
Yeah, grow from your own garden.
Grow from, yeah, that's when you can somehow think of consistency and standardization. Myself, I've currently studied from media and Uganda, and our target was to find out, of course, if you remember before medicine was made in the lab, we just go at media animal and then and extract medicine. And we want to know which liquid is done to yield the high amount of what medicine, so that because the cost, how you sell at medicine, so that media animal, the one which has the highest quantity. We paid a lot of work. It was not just the period at media animal, but how much at medicine is paid. And because it was different from different we were now more straight than the media animal. So it is very, very important from different places. It may not give you completely different compounds, but at least it will not give you the same level. The amounts they give you
Will be different.
because one for markers. Because when you talk about, I think some of the measures about taxonomy, it doesn't mean that you are going to have the same compound. In this plant having the same compound. Say,
Yeah, in the variety.
You have different compounds, but we have some compounds that are specific to gene. And we find that every plant in this genus actually have some specific compounds. Then they will find some.
Yeah, thank you for that, Prof.
But I
Yeah.
have a question.
Yes,
Do we have room
yes.
to get the new plants? I mean, new plants.
New plans.
Yes. The field that collect this plant, I take it to you for identification, and it is not
Been identified elsewhere.
identified. So,
Yes.
what's the level like that? So, you make a common thing, our own plants, identify.
No.
Just say, this is the name, but it's like this plant has never been known, and we are giving it, I mean, the name is here.
You okay. One, there is still room for getting new plans. One, because we still don't know all the plans. In fact, I was remembering looking at one of the plans that were found during COVID. There were some that were found during COVID and they were completely new. So there is still a chance that there are plants that we don't know of. They could be growing under our nose, but we don't know. So they are there. And in fact, the literature from we have the Q literature that we have at least 10 plants being discovered every year. So there is a chance. Oh, we also have plants that are becoming extinct. So there is a chance that there are new plants. There are plants somewhere we don't know about. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. 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 Yes. 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 That has happened. I remember mentioning that we sometimes have culture. It could be culture. There are certain cultures that use a particular plant in one way. The same plant in a different place is used in a different way. The chance, once you know a plant is used for anything, investigate it. Whatever it is being used, it's used for cough, investigate it. It's used for stomachache, investigate it. If you look at they're like Catharanthus roseus was found to be medicinal, but when it was investigated, it was discovered to have anti-cancer properties. So when you know a plant has a particular, any use, then that is your license to investigate it, because you will find something quite innovative. Okay, any more questions? Yes. Gotcha, yes. Mm. Yes. Under your nose, right here, University of Nairobi. It is operational. University of Nairobi is the first, actually it was one of the first herbaria. It's actually recognized. I think we have a label, we have a name, we call it NAI, N-A-I. That is the internationally recognized name. East Africa Herbarium is EA. It's internationally recognized. I think even Makerere University now is internationally recognized. So we have herbaria. Now you have no excuse to not put your material in a herbaria. They are all over. Yes. No. Just bring now. We'll be very happy to take it. Yeah. We can, and we won't even ask you to pay for it. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We have herbaria. Yes. Yes. Yes, we do. The ones I've just mentioned, the university, our herbarium is internationally recognized. We have it actually across the road. And then we have the East Africa Herbarium. There are those at least are the ones I know that are internationally recognized, but I know we also have other herbaria that have come up. I know one in KU, it's a small one coming up. So it may take some time before it is internationally recognized. But we have at least those two in Kenya. Yes. 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 Also, they can be differentiated mainly using, we've used characteristics, morphological characteristics, but now with the APG, you can actually do it at the level of DNA. Yes. No, no. You know, cultivar, just let me. Yes, that can happen. That happens. Yes. Yeah. You want to explain? Yeah. 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 Yes. Yeah. Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe different. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Mm. Yeah. 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 Mhm. The same compound. Yeah. 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 Mhm. In situ, yes. Yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you very much for that. That's what Robert was talking about, that if you want to standardize, we need to have gardens so that you are able to control the conditions. But also you made the comment about the climate change. You know, if that climate continues to change for quite a long time, you know, we can actually have species change. And that's how the dinosaur went out of fashion, you know, because of the change in climate. When it began to get too warm, they could not survive and they died out. And so you also get new species
Where
forming
do you find 4 rooms?
again through the same way.
Yeah.
So you can actually, but that takes time, a long time, but eventually you do get new species. And it's true, things have not always remained the same. And that's why we say our species are dynamic. They keep changing. Even a species that we know maybe existed 100 years ago and you think it's the same, you may actually discover it is different. So with time and the climate change and the different environmental conditions, our species continue to change. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah. To identify, yes, you can form that collaboration. A collaboration is very, it depends also on the individuals that are there. Okay. In the East Africa area, yes. Yeah. You can actually do that. We have collaboration even between our own. We really collaborate. We have a lot of collaboration between. So we have some specimens here. We have specimens there. Whenever we need to check on something, because their collection is bigger than ours, so we always go there and check. So if you really need, even for us, we can collaborate between our two universities. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you can share. Yeah. Yes, we would be happy to share because the material is not exactly the same, but I know we share certain materials, so it would be important. And sometimes we get, like we have students who come and work here from your different countries and they leave us material. So it's important that because you are studying your material more in Rwanda, so in case there are any changes, we would want to know so that we also update the material that came from Rwanda, that we have. We need to update it just when you do so. Yes, yeah. Okay, any more? Okay, so what would happen now, thank you, is that we'll take time and walk around and look at the materials that we have on the benches. We have here Dr. Judy Odhiambo. We have Simon Washira and Tiso and Catherine Kishoto. So they will assist us to just stand up. I know you're tired now. Can walk around. Okay. Thank you very much, our online participants. Yes, we are very happy that you've continued to be with us. So we are going to close now, and tomorrow we will start at 9 o'clock. Kenya time, yeah? 9 o'clock Kenya time. So please have a very good evening or night, and let's meet tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. All the best.
Presentation, very nice, very nice.
Oh,
You have to bring it, you have to do mind this every year.
yeah, we can do that. We can do it.
This is one of the things we can collaborate. It doesn't just be
And-
online.
Yes.
One thing also I'd
Yeah.
like to tell you, you mentioned very nicely and in the end, collaboration and identification of the species. Updating us with medicinal
Of
plants.
medicinal
Imagine if we did this.
All of us, yes.
You have to put this in the recommendation.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what, Robert is asking that we meet to come up with new objectives, very refined objectives. Yeah, so we should put all this together. The new changes that are happening, recommendations. Yeah.
And also, Cassandra, your friend will visit me
Ah.
in December.
Oh,
She will stay with me 3 weeks.
that's really good.
And we'll go to the desert.
Yes,
Some wives in the desert.
yeah.
We have a campus here, my university campus here. So we will collect some plants. Make the area and then get some plants.
And we come to.
Please, please, please.
Ah, that
Please,
is-
please. It will be very nice. We can make my own school really possible.
Yeah, meet the time so that we get plans and we can help us work on it. Yeah. Thank you. Ah, thank you, thank you. Yeah.
You are important. I would really like to support the different
Yeah,
possible collaboration.
it's on, it's still close.